All right, welcome into Sports Bet Betting Insight today, Wednesday, September 14th. Big game breakdown. How about Houston and Cincinnati in college and the Jets and the Bills? Big matchup in the NFL. Deep dive, looking forward to this. Teaser strategy, how to bet teasers. Teddy's an expert on this. We'll explain it, of course. Play of the day, money time. Just because you have to win doesn't mean you're going to win. Look what happened last night in baseball. A horrible night for the contenders. The also-rans cleaned up, Teddy. How about the Blue Jays, who were minus 180? They are now 3-8 in September.
Yeah, and Toronto not the only team that took a beating last night. But let's focus on Toronto just for a minute. Number one, they're playing a good spoiler in Tampa Bay, a team that continues to play hard and a divisional rival. And number two, when a good team starts falling apart in September, it can really build on itself. So what did we see last night? We saw Toronto go down. The Rays beat the Blue Jays. We saw the Twins knock off the Tigers. Not like the Tigers have played great ball down the stretch. The A's knocking off the Royals last night. The White Sox beating the Indians last night. And that one's worth noting for specifically for Jose Quintana. You know, he lowered his ERA to 3.05 last night. And I always look for individual performers that are really going hard down the stretch, Paulie. Quintana's one of those guys. He's got a chance to get it under 3 the rest of the way, and he might be worth money in the future. The White Sox certainly, like in each of these matchups, his divisional rival, still playing and still looking to be a spoiler for their playoff contending competition.
You know, Teddy, this is a great opportunity to make money, and you do it every September. The teams that have to win usually choke. The pressure gets to them. And plus, these guys are playing for jobs and rookie call-ups. It seems the bad teams always get up for these games and do well against the contenders.
Yeah, it happens, as you mentioned, every single September we see this. And everyone talks about who must win and must win. And I'm not looking to stand in front of the hot teams. Not by any stretch of the imagination. When a team's rolling in September, I have no business standing in front of them at big underdog prices. But when a team's playing mediocre to bad baseball, like, for example, I don't know, the Houston Astros. I mean, they were a bad bet again last night. They got bet up from minus 125 up to minus 140, minus 145.
Yep.
And Houston, again, comes up short. You know, what are they, 4-8 now in September? You know, these are not teams that I'm comfortable laying a price with, especially when they're slumping. And let's not forget to talk about Texas, Paulie. You know, the Rangers are now 33-10 in one-run games. That's close to 77%. You know who that's the best since?
The Brooklyn in 1890.
The Brooklyn Bridegrooms. They won 78% of their games, one-run games in 1890s. And, of course, you remember that team, Paulie.
Oh, of course,
They were managed by Bill McGungle.
Scrappy team. Oh, yeah, hell of a club. That was dynamite. That's a staple.
The Bridegrooms, man. We don't have names like, you don't get team names like that anymore.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's how historically off the chart the Rangers have been in these one-run games. And as I mentioned, you know, the Astros, 4-8 in September, 1-5 last 6, and they're losing to the good teams. The Cubs, the Indians, and the Rangers, thanks to their ice-cold bats that have produced 3 runs or less in 5 of those last 6 contests.
How about a couple bad for the books? The Yankees, a decent move on the Yankees. Teddy, the same story with the Dodgers against lefties.
Yeah, and this, I mean, you're talking about an Achilles heel. It's more than an Achilles heel. This is what's going to kill the Dodgers season. They just can't hit south. It doesn't matter who it is. Dead last in MLB, as you know, if you watched SportsBet yesterday, dead last in MLB in OPS against Southpaws. They went up against CC last night, and Sabathia was spinning it, man. He worked into the 7th. 7 strikeouts, only 3 hits, and 1 walk. And this problem for the Dodgers, dead last in the majors, an OPS against Southpaws. Man, that you just have the feeling, as much as I like this Dodgers team, and it feels different, that particular weakness stands out like a sore thumb to me, Paulie, and I'm concerned. Because the Dodgers have made efforts to try to fix it. It just hasn't happened.
Yep. Another bad for the books. The Cardinals went off as the favorite. They get by the Cubbies.
Yeah, and this is a rare night for the books to be rooting for the Cubs.
Yeah.
Of course, that's the books that cater to sharp money. Because the square books, they just take Cubs money every single night. But the wise guys were all over St. Louis last night. A 25-cent move towards the Cardinals. And, of course, you know, early exit by Jaime Garcia, but it didn't matter. The Cardinal bullpen was brilliant after he left. How about this? 7.1 innings of work. They allowed 1 hit. and no runs. Dynamite performance from that St. Louis Pen.
All right, here we go. Big game breakdown up next. Houston's on national TV. They need to take advantage of the exposure, and we'll get to the NFL game with the Jets and the Bills. Somebody's going to be 0-2. It's coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Always on the go? Bet365 has one of the top mobile platforms in today's market. Sign up today and don't let your busy life keep you out of the game.
All right, time for a big game breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Here we go. Houston at Cincinnati. Houston 7.5, 64 the total. Listen, if they win this game, folks, they can put it on cruise control till the middle of November. Look at the schedule after this game. Texas State, UConn, Navy, Tulsa, SMU, Central Florida, and Tulane before they play Louisville November 17th. So one of the big chances they get here, Teddy, with the exposure and on national television, they have to impress people and get the job done here on the road.
Yeah, but see, that's something that people always do. They always put the cart before the horse. Houston's going to be favored in all of those games. But if SMU brings their A game, could they beat Houston? Sure, they could. If Tulsa brings their A game, could they beat Houston? Yeah, and UConn. UConn beat them last year. And Navy. It's not like you can chalk in these or write in these games in pen and say, Houston, if they win this, they're golden. That's not the way college football works. That being said, this is most assuredly a showcase for the Houston Cougars to get in the conversation, which they're already in, for the playoffs. They have to take advantage of every chance they have when the cameras are on.
Yep. Smart move last week, sitting Ward against Lamar.
Yeah, I mean, it's irrelevant. Tom Herman has been as good a coach as you can find in college football since he arrived with the Cougs at the start of the 2015 season. Me sitting here in my chair in my office trying to say, oh, you're an idiot for sitting your quarterback when he was a little bit banged up against Lamar. Yeah, I can't do that. He was back at practice by Sunday night. He probably would have played Saturday against a bigger opponent, but getting him some rest in what they win, 42-0 in that game over Lamar. I don't argue with that one iota.
Well, there was so much talent on this team, and not only did they dominate Oklahoma, they should have killed them. They had to keep settling for field goals in the red zone. They fumbled at the 1-yard line. They took it to them and dominated the line of scrimmage, Teddy. This team has speed, and they got talent on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, but, look, they're not facing a joke of an opponent, Cincy last year, let's see, Ward threw for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. He ran for $119. They were at home. They were the same point spread, 7.5 points favorites at home. Now they're laying 7.5 on the road. And they won 33-30. They led 30-14 late in the third, and then 33-22. Then the Bearcats scored last in that contest. But it wasn't like we saw Houston blowing Cincinnati off the field. That's not the way the Cougars play. Mm-hmm. They are not a team that is, they're really good, but they maximize their talent level on hand. They're not loaded with elite quality athletes.
All right, your thoughts on Tuberville since he's took over at Cincinnati. Moore's the quarterback, and they bet against Cincinnati last week as they were a 3-point favorite at Purdue, and they put them away by a good margin in that one.
Yeah, they won that game by 18. Although that game was all turnovers. Mm-hmm. The Cincy defense allowed 401 passing yards versus the Boilermakers in 57 attempts. They did, however, come up with 5 interceptions in that ball game that made the final score look pretty good. In fact, the Bearcats defense now has 7 INTs through 2 games. They're making plays on the defense side of the football. Now, this is Tuberville's 4th year at Cincy, so he's playing almost all of his recruits now. And you have to wonder, is this defense finally good enough to hang versus teams like Houston? We know the Cincy offense is fine. Defensively is where I've got my questions about the Bearcats. And, of course, when it came with laying points on the road with Tuberville, I got my issues with that. That's why I did not get to the window with Cincy at Purdue last week, despite all of that wise guy money coming on the Boilermakers.
I lean over in this one. Should be a lot of fun and a big spot for Houston here coming up. Game number 2, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Jets and the Bills. Pick 'em. 40 the total. The Bills swept the Jets last year, and remember week 17, the Jets won. They were in, but Fitzpatrick threw a couple picks, and the Bills got the win. Here we go, Teddy. The coach is feeling the pressure already. The loser's in trouble here, and Bowles keeps getting asked about Revis, who was burnt toast against A.J. Green, who torched them in the win Sunday.
All right, so much to talk about here. Yeah, we're talking about a pick'em game. All the money has come on the Jets. This line opened in the range of Buffalo -3. Now we're talking pick'em. Some of that obviously has to do with Sammy Watkins being banged up for the Bills and Corey Glenn being banged up for the Bills, their left tackle. Some of it also has to do with the fact that the markets do not like Buffalo a whole lot right now. This is your, revenge game for the Jets. Mm-hmm. The Bills beat the Jets twice last year, and ironically, by the exact same score, and not one of these, 14-13 or 24-21. No, they were both 22-17 finals for Buffalo, including that Week 17 game, as you mentioned, that kept the New York Football Jets out of the playoffs. Now, the pressure, and this is the Jets media market obviously bigger than the Bills media market, but these are two New York teams, and guess what? At 0-1, the pressure's mounting already. They were arguing with Bowles about Buffalo, about the Darrelle Revis' play. I told you, we moved on to Buffalo. I don't have time to go over this. We went over it as a coaching staff and went on every play. I don't have time to talk about it now. I moved on. They moved on. Unless you've got Buffalo questions, I ain't going to be here long. Well, in other words, he's turning the page on that 1-point loss to Cincinnati. But the media isn't, Paulie. Yeah. The media continues to harp on Bowles and Ryan right now, and that's a big concern for two teams that didn't make the playoffs last year.
Well, yeah, and then plus the Jets kind of gave that away as Folk missed an extra point and a field goal was blocked. They felt they should have won that game. But you look at the Jets, Teddy, for argument's sake, let's say they lose. They're going to be underdogs in their next 4 games.
Oh, yeah. They have a real prospect of going 0-6 if they lose this contest. They will be underdogs in all those games. But that's the beauty of the New York media market, okay? The Jets lost the game. Forget about Darrelle Revis. And, they say, Revis got torched. No, Revis' presence in the secondary that allowed the Jets to play one-on-one coverage and that allowed the Jets to sack Andy Dalton 7 times. That was Darrelle Revis. Yeah. That didn't happen by accident. So even though his stats look bad, you say, he got torched. His presence on the field allowed the Jets defense to a lot more than they would have done without him on the field. Yep. That being said, here's the New York media market, and guess what? It's Bowles' fault that Nick Folk had his first missed extra point of his career and had a 22-yard field goal blocked. Okay, it's the kicker's fault that the Jets lost that game, not anybody else. Of course, they did just go 2 for 5 in red zone opportunities, but then again, the Bills, they weren't any better. Ooh. They got inside the 20 only once versus Baltimore.
So we watched that horror show Monday night with the Rams where they couldn't do a damn thing. Well, they had more yards than the Bills. The Bills had 160 yards in the loss against the Ravens, and they had 9 possessions, and they had 5 3-and-outs. Maybe they should have waited on that extension to Taylor.
Well, again, Baltimore's defense was good. Taylor lost his best receiver, and Buffalo's offensive line didn't protect him. So we always point the finger at the quarterback. It's not always the quarterback's fault. That being said, there is one built-in advantage here for the Jets, or for the Bills, I should say, and this is particularly early in the season. Short week and travel are not good for Thursday night road underdogs. That's been proven historically, and that's certainly something to be aware of, especially being that whatever value there was on the Jets at +3, it's gone now in this pick'em range. And frankly, some of the books have already moved to New York Jets -1. There'll be road chalk at a number of places tonight.
Nothing going with the running game at Baltimore. 65 yards at 2.7 per carry. Here's a quote from Rex. It's just that we had too many 3-and-outs. I think we had 5 Ks, we call them. It's too hard to establish any sort of rhythm when you're doing that. Then the first quarter on defense, the team right there, they control the pace of the game. It's felt to me, part of that, when you make teams go 3-and-out, it's hard to establish a rhythm. End quote there. It's a lot of people ripping Greg Roman. I'm not a fan of him as a coordinator. For whatever reason, what worked in San Francisco, they abandoned the pistol with Kaepernick after they had the playoff success. So he's taking some heat in Buffalo, too, for the job he's doing.
Well, look at the quote from LaShawn McCoy. And read between the lines of this quote, okay? Because the quote itself isn't going to say what I think it says. But listen, they did really well shutting us down on third down plays. They had a number of third down packages that surprised us, and they were structured very well. I read between the lines there, and I think it's a subtle way of saying their coaches were smarter than our coaches, and that happens fairly often when the Bills play another NFL team.
Yes. All right. Yeah, for LiveOdds, SportsbookReview.com. Up next, play of the day in the deep dive. We'll talk about teaser strategy, and Teddy's an expert on this. We'll explain and run it down rapid fire up next on SportsBit, betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Do your research before you bet. Check out our ratings guide to see which books have the best ratings and sign-up bonuses. Open up several accounts and shop for lines at SBRodds.com. Always be ahead of the game.
All right, Paulie and Teddy back on SportsBit at Paulie Howard on Twitter at Teddy_covers. Deep dive. But we want to talk about this because of what happened Sunday in the Colts-Lions game, where a lot of guys had the Colts on a teaser and they lost because of the safety at the end. So basic teaser strategy coming up in a second. Teddy, you're an expert on this. Wall Street flew you out a couple years ago to talk about it.
Yeah. I got to give a presentation at the trading show in New York. It was kind of cool, being around some of the Wall Street money, which you don't get to see all the time in Las Vegas. I went out there with John Netto. He's the president of M3 Capital, and of course Ed Meyer from NTI Sports, who was also a professor who's done a lot of work with teasers over the year. And the three of us went and gave a nice presentation at the trading show in New York, and it was one of those, whirlwind trips. You fly in, you fly out. I think I was there for about 36 hours. Fun to spend some time in the city. But yeah, I do know a little bit about teasers. It's something that when it comes to basic strategy, and I'm not going to take credit for it by any stretch of the imagination, but when it comes to basic strategy on teasers, it's something that, boy, the public, they do so many things wrong. We need to help with this deep dive. All
right, how does it work? Break it down. What are they doing wrong?
All right, let's start with the brains behind the opera. I'm not I'm not an idiot, but I'm not Stanford Wong either. Stanford Wong, of course, a noted blackjack theorist. He wrote a book called Sharp Sports Betting that was first published in 2001. That came through with the idea of basic strategy teasers. All right, the basic strategy is this: you're taking short underdogs and teasing them up to bigger underdogs. But plus 1.5, plus 2, plus 2.5. Those are the key ranges. Because then what's happening is you're getting all of the key numbers working for you in your teasers. The goal is more games in the NFL end on 3 than any other. The second most common result is a 7-point victory. Then 6, and then 4. So when you're moving a dog from plus 1.5 up to plus 7.5, or plus 2.5 up to plus 8.5, you're capturing all of those key numbers. That's your little sweet spot, that tiny little range, plus 1.5 to plus 2.5 underdogs, less than a field goal. You tease them up to more than a touchdown, and boom, that's basic strategy. It's a similar story the other way around. You're taking the favorites of slightly more than a touchdown, 7.5 to 8.5 point favorites. You're using your standard NFL 6-point 2-team teaser. You knock those 7.5s down to 1.5, or the 8.5s down to 2.5, and that little range for the favorites, again, you're capturing all the key numbers, 3, 4, 6, and 7. That's basic strategy for teasers. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. You tease short dogs up over a touchdown. You tease bigger favorites down under a field goal. And those are the only games, the only ones that you use teasers for. That's it. Nothing else.
What were give us some examples of these games Sunday, week 2.
Well, yeah, I mean, your classic example for week 2. Okay, there's 3 games that stand out as being good teaser candidates right now, and they're all underdogs because there are no favorites this week in that 7.5 to 8.5 point range. You have KC, they're looking at plus 2.5 right now at Houston. KC, tease them up to 8.5. That makes sense. The Vikings, 2.5 point home dogs to Green Bay. The Vikings, tease them from 2.5 to 8.5. That makes sense. The Cowboys, 2.5 point dogs at Washington. Again, 2.5 up to 8.5. KC, Minnesota, Dallas. Those are the 3 teams that fit into basic teaser strategy this week.
Tease the NFL only. The lines are tight. These other sports, too much variance in totals and college football. Get away from that. I've heard this story before, and it's awesome. Share your NBA teaser story in your bookie days.
Sure. And let me just come in with this, okay? When you say tease the NFL only, that means tease the frickin' NFL only, okay? 6 points are worth more in lower totaled games. So when you start getting these games in college where the totals are in the 60s and the 70s, the 6 points you just bought, they're not worth as much. NFL games that are generally totaled in the 40s, 6 points are worth a lot more. So you asked for the NBA teaser story. This is a true story, man. When I was a bookie in Ann Arbor in the early 90s, we didn't know anything. We were idiots. We knew that teasers were 6 points. NFL teasers were 6 points. We just assumed that NBA teasers were 6 points. There was no internet, you know? Yeah. So we spent a full year as a bookie giving clients, or giving, I guess they were clients, giving bettors 6 points on NBA teasers. You know how many people beat us during that year, Paulie? Zero. Not one. The extra 2 points made no difference in anybody's bottom line for the course of the entire season. Now, admittedly, we were booking to college kids that didn't know what the hell they were doing. It was a very different era. Mm-hmm. But that speaks volumes about why I'm not teasing NBA, why I'm not teasing college hoops. Tease NFL. That's the sport that the wise guys tease because it's beatable. Teasers in the NFL do have positive expectation opportunity.
Explain why I don't think we mentioned it, but explain why everyone made a mistake if they teased the Colts Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, the Colts, you can't tease across zero, okay? Games don't land on zero. You have one tie, every 2 years in the NFL, every 4 years in the NFL? It doesn't happen very often. So when you're teasing across zero, and boy, the amateurs love to do this. They love, instead of laying 3.5, now I'm catching 2.5, and silly stuff across zero. You're paying for a point that you don't get when you tease across zero. That's why anyone that lost teasing Indy last week on that last safety, on that final safety, I hate to tell you, you deserve to lose. You violated basic strategy.
Yes. Anything else you want to mention?
Well, the last thing I would say is don't tease totals. You're looking for, the whole concept of teasers is look for lower variance. Games where you expect it to be relatively close to the point spread. That's why we like teasing the NFL, because we know that the power ratings and the point spread in the NFL are tight, and game after game comes down to the wire in the fourth quarter in the NFL. That's why we like teasing the NFL. Okay? And they're lower total games, but boy, people start teasing totals. They start teasing and they just get caught up with it. That's not the way to beat teasers. The way to beat teasers, 2-team 6-point teasers, 3-team 6-point teasers, 4-team 6-point teasers, however many you want to fit into your tease that fall into the basic strategy. Don't tease totals. Don't tease across zero. God, for God's sakes, don't tease the NBA or college hoops or college. But yes, you can beat teasers. Professional bettors do bet teasers, but only in the NFL and only using basic strategy.
Very good. Fun segment. I enjoyed that. All right. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So we're not changing anything. You have the hot hand here when we go to you. Money time, play of the day, baseball. What are we doing?
Yeah, play of the day's been on a real nice run. We've been winning in football. We've been winning in baseball. Let's see if we can keep it rolling. Of course, no football today because I'm not involved in either of the Thursday games that we just talked about. That being said, I'm involved in baseball tonight. Game number 924, the Chicago White Sox. They're minus 115 right about now. We told you about Jose Quintana earlier as being a bet-on guy. Now let's talk about Carlos Rodon. Rodon 5-0 with a 1.85 ERA since August 1st. He's facing Tomlin. And Josh Tomlin, he's 0-5 with an 11.20 ERA since August 1st. Okay, the White Sox also Rans. They're relishing this chance to play the spoilers. They're only 4 games under 500, so there is a sense of purpose. And, of course, the easy win on Tuesday brings the key bullpen arms in fresh for the White Sox. This is a pick'em game. One pitcher's a .185 ERA. The other guy's 11.20. No chance. Give me the White Sox minus 115. That's our play of the day.
Awesome, baby. We're back Thursday. You could argue that week 3 coming up is better than week 1 in college football. Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan State, Notre Dame. How about Louisville and Florida State? We'll run down all the games, a big game breakdown coming up tomorrow. Talk to you then. Thanks for the spike in views. Tell your friends. See you tomorrow. SportsBit, betting insight today on SBRpicks.com, baby.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.